of minutes. And could I just ask everybody, and I'll ask you this again, will you please just sign in on the chat strap? Just put in your name and your organization so that serves as an attendance register. It's quite important for us to know who's attended. Thank you. What have we got so far? Thank you everybody. Hello Jenny, how are you? Okay, we got good. Oh, I see they all get added on in order of arrival. Tuli Mashiani. Tuli, hello.
Hello. Hi, Peter.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, and you?
Very well, thanks. Listen, we were just talking beforehand. What university are you at?
I'm at the University of East Anglia.
Oh, UEA.
Yes, I mentioned it to you, and you told me you've been here a couple of years.
That's right. I have. Especially the Sainsbury Art Gallery.
It's still going strong. It looks amazing.
Is it? It's the most beautiful art gallery. It really is.
Yes. Yeah.
I bought my first copy of Mao Zedong's Thoughts there. Just a little red book. It was complete rubbish, but it was good to have one to see what the man had said. Oh, good. So you at UEA. You're going into summer, but Norwich is a bad place in winter.
It was more than freezing. I have no words for it.
I played rugby there once, and the field was frozen. It was like playing on an ice rink.
Yeah, you literally walk on ice. So,
it's the most ridiculously cold place I've ever been to, I think.
And today I was ready to brag because I know all of you are freezing there, and we have sun finally. But today we don't.
We've got a bit of sun after a few days of overcast and rain, but it is rather a lovely day today.
Yeah, no, today mine is not. It's a bit like Cape Town. You have like beautiful sunshine for 3 days and then rain and cold the next day. So that's what we have.
Yeah, well, but you're in for a lovely summer, I'm sure, because the weather's been good up to now.
It's beautiful, yeah. It's been wonderful.
Okay, guys, it's 10:01, and I wonder if we've got. I see Christian is there. I wonder if we should start. I think we should start, or should we give it another couple of minutes?
It's going to be 1 year and one on that side.
Benta, let me be guided by you. Now, Princess, you don't have to wear your mask now because COVID isn't transmitted over the internet. Benta. Hello, Benta.
Hi, Peter.
Just you tell me when you think we should kick off.
Okay, another 2 minutes and then we kick off.
Another couple of minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Roseanne. Is that Chris Fisser? Is that Christian Fisser? That Chris? I wonder. Okay.
This is Chris Ramdas from MIET Africa.
Oh, okay, I see. All right, not Christian then. Oh, I see. Chris, to everyone from MIET. Okay, excellent. In Durban. All right. Very Barnard. Oh, this is a really nice turnout, guys. I think you're going to have a whale of a time today. This is wonderful.
Peter, I think we can start.
All right, we should get going.
Yeah.
All right, well, somebody said the other day, there is only one thing that the whole world had in common this time last year, and that was a complete inability to predict where they would be 1 year hence. I don't think even at the beginning of the year, we didn't realize quite what we would be going through in the few months between, say, February, March, and now. But it's wonderful that we have all of this technology. All right. Can I ask that while we're talking and while we're not in open plenary, can I ask please that you turn off your mics so that we don't get your background conversations and noise and the clatter when you get up to make your coffee. So if you just leave your mics on, and then we will change the modality slightly when we get into a plenary session. Yeah, so we really have been through, as they say, a very steep learning curve. We're all, in some important ways, quite different to the way we were before. But it's wonderful that we have the technology that allows us to join, to talk, and to share experiences, which is exactly what we're going to do now. Now, our last COP, we had a wonderful turnout. The room was jam-packed, and we had some really stimulating discussion on why kids have problems with maths. What are the things that we as teachers take for granted that are anything but taken for granted by the learners themselves, and where are we missing them? And the discussion was so good, in fact, that we said we would carry it on at the next COP. Shows how much we knew. Now, in the interim, of course, a lot of us have become a bit more familiar with this term online teaching. What exactly does it mean? And so while we're talking about maths, we're talking about science, we're talking about the actual transaction of teaching children, we've got to overlay it with something that's become very important in all our lives, and that is online teaching. And also to bring in people that know a little bit more about it and have had a little bit more experience. And so we're very lucky today to have two speakers who are fairly well versed in it. The first, which is our shorter length speaker, and you can see him up on the screen there if you've got it on gallery view, Iliyaas Amien. He's a UCT medical and neuroscience student, and he has started something called Tutonic, which is an online tutoring service providing maths support for high school students. And I'm sure, Iliyaas, you'll tell us a little bit more about your motivation, what drove you to do it. And then he's also going to talk for between, let's say, 10 to 15 minutes. He's going to talk about his experiences and perhaps some of the learning that he's had to go through, and finding the best and most effective way of teaching on the internet, teaching online. So we'll start with that. Welcome. It's really nice to have you, and I'm sure by the end of your short talk, you'll still have a lot more to say, which is why we will have a short question and answer session. after your talk. And then, Iliyaas, are you able to stay with us for the full 2 hours?
Because we cannot chat.
You are, good. Because then I'm
Yes,
sure there'll be,
different.
in the plenary session, there'll be more questions coming your way. So I don't think I should go on any further because you didn't come here to hear me philosophizing about online. You've come to hear about real practitioners. I am one, by the way. I've been teaching online for the term, and it's been quite a ride. But Iliyaas, thank you very much for being with us. Welcome, and it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Peter, and to the rest of the Bridge team for inviting me to give this talk. I feel incredibly privileged. So is it possible for me to share my screen? I think there's a bit of...
Yes, you can, and please do.
Okay.
Oh, nampak sabi ko nga babon.
Okay, could you please switch off your microphones? We'll get you back when it's into plenary. But for the moment, switch off your microphones, please.
Can you see the screen?
I've got a beautiful picture.
Okay.
I hope everybody does.
I can see it, just confirming.
Okay, just let me know when I can start.
Okay, I think you must start while people look to get your screen up on their sets, but I think you should get going.
Okay. Okay, so good morning, everyone. So this presentation is about Tutonic. So Tutonic is a free online tuition service that serves to provide mathematics support to high school students. And when starting Tutonic, we started Tutonic based on a number of core principles that is sort of underpinning our organization. And the first of these is that we believe in quality and accessible maths tuition. One of the big challenges in the current system is that there may be many quality tuition systems, but not necessarily accessible. And the converse is also true. We say that there are many systems which might be accessible, but not always of the greatest quality. So Tutonic tries to marry and, if I can use the pun, bridge the gap between these two entities. We also believe in conceptual understanding. One of the big challenges in schools is that students are often taught to rote learn mathematics, but at Tutonic, we say that maths is a language, and a language ought to be memorized, but it also ought to be understood. So we place a very, very big emphasis on understanding concepts, and we actually encourage students to make sure that the concepts are well grounded before they ever attempt past papers. We also believe in maximizing classroom efficiency. One of the big challenges in the classroom is that students often don't spend enough time in the classroom making the most of their classroom experience. And we say that if you don't spend enough time, or if you're not efficient inside the classroom, the more time you're going to spend on maths outside of the classroom. And I think that in many schools, there is a lot of room to maximize classroom efficiency. So Tutonic is not just about teaching maths, it's about how can we change the structural environment of the classroom. We also believe in enjoyment of mathematics. This is a big problem in our society. Students grow up and they think that maths is just, there are people who are good at maths, people who are not good at maths. You're a maths person or you're not a maths person. And maths is not given a very, we don't necessarily give maths the appreciation that it deserves. And also I think that the enjoyment of mathematics is very much linked to its understanding. The more people understand maths, I found that the more that they enjoy it. So there seems to be a correlation between these two things. And then the last principle is that we believe in a gradual accumulation of facts and concepts. In fact, I say that maths is a marathon. And you could argue that that marathon starts in grade 1, but I even tell the students that it starts in grade 8 and it ends in grade 12. But most students They walk the marathon in grade 8, 9, and 10. And then in grade 11, they start jogging. And then in grade 12, they start sprinting. And this is one of the big challenges, is because even though you are sprinting in grade 12, you've got so much ground to cover, because so much of grade 12 is dependent on your understanding from previous grades. So it's not just about just teaching mathematics to students, it's about inculcating a certain philosophy of learning, which is grounded on gradual accumulation of facts and concepts. So these are the core principles of Tutonic. How do we go about achieving these principles? So that's the next part of the presentation. And you'll see I've put up an algorithm, and this is the algorithm that we give to our students. And the point of the algorithm is to give students and show them and take them on an academic journey that starts with the generation of knowledge, the refinement of knowledge, the application of concepts. And we believe that this is the best way to go about learning mathematics. And you'll see that there are 4 major stages of this algorithm that I'll go through in more detail, but I just wanted to show you the big picture. It starts with the generation of concepts, the establishment, the refinement of concepts through quizzes, taking questions to apply your knowledge of these concepts, and then also being able to engage with a tutor. And you'll see that I've explained in this box why I believe concepts are important, but I think we've already established that. So let's move on to the first stage of the algorithm, which is the concept videos. So you'll see that Tutonic has created concept videos on every single topic in the math syllabus. Every single topic in the math syllabus from grade 8 to 12. So this is the idea behind these videos, and there are about 250 of these videos, is to establish concepts. So to build concepts, because we believe that if students understand concepts, that is the first step in the learning algorithm. You shouldn't be practicing past papers before you have a solid grounding in the concepts. But that's not the only thing. It's not just about having lots and lots of concepts. It's also about being able to organize concepts in the best way possible. So you can see that we give students these interactive mind maps. So this is something that we give to the matriculants, and you can see that this is what we call a functions mind map. And you can see on the left-hand side that there's concepts in the grade 12 syllabus. Does the screen move? Can you see the screen moving? Does it move on your side? Can you see the screen moving on your side, Peter?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Yes,
Okay.
I can.
So you can see on the left-hand side that we've got calculus, grade 12, functions, logarithms, but on the right-hand side, you can see there's also grade 11 work, grade 10 work, grade 9 work, and grade 8 work as well. Because we believe that, as I said earlier, I think there's a bit of background, but as I said earlier on, it's about taking students on an academic journey. So we want the grade 12 students to be able to see the big picture. So this is the grade 12 work, but we also want them to see what journey they should have taken in the other areas. So you can see these different globe icons. I'm not sure if you guys can appreciate the globe icons on the screen. Do you see these globe icons?
Yes, we
so
can.
all these globe icons are videos. And all you have to do to watch a video is to click on one of these globe icons and it takes you to the video. So the idea behind organizing the content like this is so that students can see the big picture. They can see how everything is structured. And we've created a mind map like this for every section. So students can start with trigonometry and they can see, okay, I'm in grade 12 now, but there are concepts that I should have been taught in grade 10 and grade 11 that I maybe need to go back to before I can start the grade 12 trigonometry. So that's the point of these concept videos. So that's the first step of the algorithm. This is the establishment of concepts. But the next step is, how do we know that the student understands the concept? And to do that, we've created various concept quizzes. And you can see this is the concept quiz on solving equations for grade 10. And the whole point of the quiz is to see, does the student understand the concept? So you should be able to see that This is a question, solve the linear equation 10x minus 5. So the answer will be 3. Notice how there's like there's sparkles when the student gets the question right. So they feel that sense of satisfaction. But look what happens when the student gets something wrong. If you look very carefully, they got this question wrong. And they get an explanation for every question that they've got wrong. And they also get a link. And this link takes them back to the concept video that explains the concept that they got wrong. So the idea behind these concept quizzes, as I say here, is to be able to identify and close the gaps in knowledge. We often joke at Tutonic and we say that, you know, many students don't know what they don't know. This is a big challenge in the classroom. And before you can close your gaps in knowledge, you first have to identify them. And the way you identify your gaps is either by teaching it or by doing quizzes. And that's why we give students these quizzes so that they can identify all their gaps in knowledge and close them before they start practicing questions. The next part of the algorithm is students being able to practice past questions. And we have a bank of about 450 questions the students can work through. And each question has a video solution next to it so that students can see the thinking process, because I'm sure as educators you can appreciate that the memo only tells you what to think. It tells you how to solve a question. It does not tell you how to think. It does not tell you how to approach a question. And this is fundamentally very important. So we believe that understanding and breaking down a question is the most important aspect of the maths learning process. So that's why we create these videos. So you can see here that one of our tutors is actually breaking down this question, explaining to the student, how do you go about thinking about something like this? Because many students, they don't even attempt these types of questions because it looks so complicated. They look at the memo, they memorize the memo, but the memo doesn't make sense. So how do you teach students to interpret questions, to read questions, to think about questions? And this is the point of the video. It's showing students how to apply application of concepts. And the beautiful thing about these concepts and these questions is that they all come from previous students. So the students actually learn from each other. So at the moment, Tutonic has about 712 students, and all those students are allowed to ask questions. But those questions and those resources that we create for other students can be shared with other learners so that the students actually learn from each other as much as they learn from their own questions. So the next part of the algorithm is giving students the opportunity to actually ask a tutor a question. So you'll see that these first 3 services are just generation of knowledge, refinement of knowledge, practicing questions. But number 4, you're actually able to ask a tutor your own question, any question that you're struggling with. And we've got a group of university students who are manning our system and are waiting for students to ask them various questions, and they can support them in various ways. For example, you can see here, this is a student that asked us a question on tangents and calculus. And this actually happened a few days ago. But luckily, we actually answered this question for another student 2 years ago. And that's the beautiful thing, is that the questions often repeat themselves. So because Tutonic has created videos on the majority of the questions that students could be asked in the syllabus, we can recycle these responses. So this student asked a question maybe a few days ago, but I made the exact same video on the exact same question 3 years ago, which I could now share with the student, and she then says that she understands the concept. This is just one way in which the tutors can provide tuition to so many students. And I say here that we emphasize the thinking process. Tutonic is not just a memo service. And the idea behind this is to allow for engagement, because it's not just about giving students resources. It's not just about giving students all these things to learn. It's about giving them the opportunity to engage. Engagement is very important. And I think this is the challenge. There are many online tuition services that are static. They say, okay, here's your syllabus, learn the syllabus, but they don't give you the opportunity to talk to somebody if you have a question, because every student learns differently. So that's actually the syllabus. That's actually the algorithm. I hope that I've shown you the academic journey that we want students to go on. I was asked to maybe just share my thoughts on how, the effect of the lockdown has had on Tutonic. overall, the service has been largely unaffected on the basis that we've been offering free tuition. It's an online service. So our services have not really been affected, because we're not a lockdown organization. We've established this in 2016. So teaching online is our philosophy. It's our primary philosophy. So you could argue that we already had infrastructure in place to deal with the current circumstances. However, what has changed is that we've seen a massive influx of new students, and we've had to upgrade our system to cope with that. The other issue is just that many students, I've shown you the algorithm, and it looks really nice. It worked. I'm very certain that it works, but unfortunately, many students don't follow the algorithm because that's not how they've been taught. Many students they think that, I work with so many matriculants, and they start with past papers. They've got hundreds of past papers that they're working through, but the concepts are not strong. And I think, let me just practice lots and lots of questions, and that's going to help me through the exam. But memorizing memos is not what helps you in the exam. It's about having an approach to questions. And that approach can only be grounded if you have a solid understanding of the various concepts. So that's why we almost have to change the philosophy of the students who join Tutonic, because many of them just come to us and ask questions. Like something that happened the other day, a student sent me an entire exam paper, and they said, help me with this exam paper. And we say, no, that's not the algorithm. The algorithm is you start with the concepts, and then you go to the quiz. And what you'll find is that as you follow this algorithm, your questions will naturally start to be answered. You will naturally start to cover those gaps, and you will start to see how all those questions, 90% of the questions that you're doing in your past exam papers, you will be able to answer them through a solid understanding of those concepts. So that is our philosophy, and that's essentially our organization. We believe it's not just about teaching maths. I'm in the medical field, so we believe in not just treating symptoms, but it's also about tackling the underlying cause. When you have a patient that comes to you with stomach pain, obviously you can treat the pain, but you also want to treat the underlying conditions that is causing and perpetuating the pain. So we need to be thinking, okay, treating the symptoms in the maths context is helping students with mathematics. But we also have to think about what are the structural challenges that is contributing to students even seeking tuition in the first place. So these questions are very important. So that Tutonic is not just about teaching maths, it's about looking at the big picture. How can we change the structural conditions of the classroom? And that is our philosophy. So
okay,
that's
Iliyaas,
essentially our
Iliyaas,
program.
Thank you very much. That I know it's just the bare bones of what you're talking about, but I wonder if we could you take the screen down again, and
Sure.
And I think what I'll do now, let me invite anybody who wants to ask something, just put it up on the chat line, and I will then ask you to put your question directly to Iliyaas. And we'll limit this because there will be more time later when we open up to a more plenary session to put questions to either of the speakers. Okay, a question from Razia. And a whole lot here. Razia wants to know, how do we access the program? In fact,
So
I'll just ask the question.
Yeah. So to access Tutonic, we have a website. I'll even type it on the chat so then everybody can see, just to make it easier.
And your contact details, if you don't mind giving some way of getting in touch with you, because I've been asked that already. Yes,
that's our email address. And if you really want to contact me urgently, I'll give my cell phone number. So what grade does this start? This is from grade 8 to grade 12. It's a high school service. So remember I said that maths is a marathon. So, we didn't believe in just teaching matriculants because so much of the matric work depends on your understanding of previous grades. So we thought, let's rather open up the service to high school students. Obviously in the future, we're only 2 years old, 3 years old. So we're looking to expand. Obviously one can expand in different grades. I believe, you have to go to primary school students, you have to diversify your subjects. You also have to diversify your languages. Of course, English is our mode of communication, but yeah, that's the question now. Any plans in the African language? So of course, we are definitely planning to do that. We needed to show that this concept works first. That was the most important thing for me. Does this concept actually work? So we had to start small, and I think that we've shown that it does work. And now we're at a stage where, conveniently, where the country is needing a platform to engage with online learning, we have the infrastructure to offer that and to expand. Are there any other questions?
Is it all, Iliyaas, is it all voluntary? Your tutors?
It's all voluntary at the moment. Yeah, so we've got about
students
30.
Mainly university students, or
mainly university students. They're all volunteers, and I think that is also a testification of the the product. The fact that so many people are doing this voluntarily, that they must believe in what this organization does. They're volunteering their time, engaging in this program, because they must see the impact that it's having on students. And I hope that I've convinced you that this is not just about giving resources to students, because what you'll see, many organizations just throw the resources at the students and they don't really know where to start. So that's why I make the argument that it's about taking students on an academic journey. And we show the students the algorithm that they need to go on if they want to succeed in mathematics.
Iliyaas, there's a couple of people have asked, is it 0 rated, your website?
So Tutonic is free, but the site is not 0 rated at this point.
Okay.
We are working on it.
You're working on
it. I do recognize that is one of the limitations of the organization. Obviously, we offer our services for free, but data is not free. So we are working on that.
You mentioned you had about 700 students who use you. How many tutors have you got, and give us some idea of the numbers? Have they gone up during lockdown?
Yeah, both numbers have gone up. Just to give you a picture, we had about 150 students or 250 students before the lockdown, and now we have 712. So it was a massive increase. But our system, and we have about 23 tutors, but our system that we've designed caters for that. It caters for a large student to tutor ratio because of the other services that we provide. You'll notice that in that algorithm, only the 4th stage is interaction between tutors and students. The first step, concept videos, students can watch at any time. They can learn at any place. They can learn at their own pace also. The quiz, that is completely automatic. Practicing questions is also completely asynchronous for students to use. Only the 4th stage, which is the engagement, we have human interaction. And by that time, most of the questions the students would have asked a tutor have already been answered, because they've been going on this journey of gradual accumulation of facts and concepts.
Can teachers access you and engage with you?
100%. So if you go on Tutonic's website, you'll see that we have a registration service for teachers to join Tutonic. For the simple reason that I mentioned, Tutonic is trying to be a holistic platform. The way that we make indentations in this education system is not just by helping students, it's also by working with teachers. So many teachers sign up for Tutonic because we give them our concept videos for free, so that they can use it and inculcate those concept videos into the classroom. So one of the things that we recommend to teachers is to actually tell students to watch the concept videos before they come to class. So if you remember at the beginning of my presentation, I mentioned that we want to maximize classroom efficiency. And the way I believe we can do that is by giving students a foundation before they come to the classroom. So even if it means getting 80% or 70% of the concepts before they come to class, that means that the teacher can then close the remaining gaps for the student, as opposed to students coming to class with nothing. It's very difficult in a class of 25, even in the affluent school, to communicate concepts to 25 learners, especially when they come with no foundation. So that's how we believe that Tutonic can actually be incorporated into the classroom. We mustn't think that Tutonic is trying to replace teachers. This is a big misconception that I think people might have. The whole point of the service is to supplement teachers. It's to support the education system. It's to supplement the learning process.
Well, Iliyaas, that I'm sure that there are one or two other questions about accessing and teachers and so on. I think you've covered the bare bones of it, and I'll invite everybody to put more specific questions to you later. And also, when the discussion goes into plenary, if you feel you have something specific to add on something, I'd like you just to come in and do that. But anyway, I'm rather belittled by the huge effort that you guys have made, knowing what it takes, having just had one term of experience, and just the amount of material in your concept videos, and you've created a little Western Cape Khan Academy by the looks of things, all on your own and in a very short time. So congratulations, it is an absolutely brilliant effort. And I hope that you go from strength to strength, but I'm also very glad that you're now part of the maths and science COP, so that we have somebody who's really been at the coalface, being able to make input into our discussions. Thank you so much, and you will stay with us, so we will hear from you more a little later. People, moving straight on to our next speaker, and that is it's Nonhlanhla Masina. Now there she is, smiling at you. I must just make sure that I haven't muted you. You've got your own. You're in control of your life, are you? All right, give us your mic so we can start talking.
Hi.
Hi, Nonhlanhla. Nonhlanhla is the head of the African School of Excellence, and I'm sure she will give you a little bit more on just what that is. But my understanding is that you've also had a fair amount of experience, probably over the last 3 or 4 months, if not before, in online teaching. And so I don't, just as far as where you're from, the background is in biochemistry. She's a molecular biologist. She's also done a master's degree with a bent towards pharmacy and pharmaceuticals. So there's biochemistry in action. And from that academic angle, she is now switched across to running a school and teaching high school students. And so, Nonhlanhla, I'd just be talking nonsense if I carried on telling everybody what you're about and what you're going to talk about, because I don't know either. So it's over to you, and we'll hold you on the line for about 25 minutes, if that's so. And we won't worry about short questions after you talk unless there are some burning issues, but you will be the main one in the firing line during the plenary session. But I wonder if you would like to kick off now, and thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much. Morning, everyone. So my background, training-wise, is in the sciences, but I grew up in the community that I currently serve, where African School for Excellence is. It's in Zakane in Ekurhuleni East here in Joburg. And I think for math and science teaching, I started teaching my math and science classes from when I was in 10th grade. And I was generally swayed away from teaching because it was always my first option, but my teachers wouldn't have any of that. So if I can just go straight to it, I'm trying to share my screen here so I can start. I hope you all can see. So I decided to focus my attention more on the opportunities that that COVID has revealed for math and science teaching, particularly bringing it into the home of students. I think it's worthwhile talking a little bit about the profile of our students. We service a low-income community. Tsakani probably has, I think it's going to be interesting to see post-COVID, at least 30% unemployment rate, so slightly above average for Gauteng. So our students are generally paying $850 a month. We're a non-profit running Cambridge International School. We've always had this rotational sort of model that's going, where students would start off with a problem-solving session before going into the teacher. So echoing what the previous speaker said around solving the problem first, so that students are in the right zone of proximal development. So when they get in the class, they're ready to hit the ground running and get straight into discussion. And then post that, they would go into an independent session. So this is where we would either be administering a small quiz, or for us, we would use in this session, I'm keen to check out Tutonic, we would be using Khan Academy at times, using the offline version to allow students to self-pace and practice, so that we're not leaving any practice till the end of the week or the end of the term to then catch a student late for not having understood the concept. So that's just a basic intro. I can say more about AC perhaps at the end of the, I abbreviated to AC, the full name is African School for Excellence. I can say more about it at the end of the presentation if there are more questions. But I just wanted to dive straight into some of what we've had to do to adapt with the time lost. So we obviously are dealing with students who don't necessarily have a device at home, and we have a connectivity issue with most township students because they don't have coverage for, at times they don't have coverage for the internet, or when they do, it's too expensive. I'm lucky enough now, I'm sitting and I'm connected to a fiber line, and the speed is great. When we first tried, after the first 2 weeks of announcement of the lockdown, we said, you know, we're going to do a hybrid of Zoom, WhatsApp, and Google Classroom. And very quickly we realized that was too much for students, because on a Zoom platform, the kids were finishing, going through at least 300 megabytes a day, just sitting in Zoom sessions, discussions with teachers. So we had to go back and just review in the last month how we actually do that. So we've had to cancel Zoom and instead have a smaller discussions using WhatsApp groups. Because the data cost there is lower, and social media data was seemingly more affordable for our students. If it wasn't, then we had to even go as far as providing students with data to enable them to be able to connect and discuss. Obviously, the affordability piece, we've even had to go as far as trying to source devices for students, but we've also discovered the power of the smartphone. Kids can do a lot with the smartphones that they have. Even a simple Mobicel and Huawei device can have a Google Classroom installed. It can access your WhatsApp. So we just had to learn to be a bit more creative around how do we continue trying to learn and maintain a form of community during COVID times, because you find that learning is still social and emotional in nature. Students need to connect to each other and to us as teachers to feel like they belong, so that they can be able to further access. So those were some of the things we had to work with, and one of the biggest things that we have discovered that is sometimes a barrier, and we don't always talk about when thinking about student homes, particularly in low-income communities, is the access to a productive space to work. I have incorporated some videos here of student work, because through this you start seeing what else might we have to incorporate in our thinking, or how are we supposed to change our thinking to further support students to ensure that they're always able to learn. Because at times, even giving the device access, even giving the connectivity, students still can't have a productive space to learn in the home. But there have been some very nice gems that we found, and I wanted to share some videos as a means to take you through some of the modifications we've had to do in our program. You find that if you say, we gave students, I'll have this on my next slide, we put a huge emphasis on practical learning. Everything has to be or what do you call it? They have students, we try and create a physical experience of a concept before students can discuss it. Now, this means generally we take a longer time to get to the typical textbook stuff that we would be teaching on a math and science standpoint. But once kids have fully engaged in inquiry, they do get the concept. So here, students, this is a grade 12 student, and over the first leg of the lockdown, we were still continuing with curriculum, and we had to look at ways and equally review graphical analysis for linear relationships and exponential relationships. If you let me, I'll just show you this one clip from this one student. Okay, and so this would have been a stronger student here, and they would have to collect the data. I have it in my next slide, but equally students have, students began to, the ones that have a challenge were better, excuse me, felt safer making mistakes. So the student here and the second one is someone who typically, she struggles at times when you put her in a lab setting and she has to solve problems. She's someone that you need to give extra time to work on a problem, and at times isn't always brave to attempt, and teachers have to work harder to get her out. Cool. With both students, you'll notice they're at different ends of the spectrum. One is a bit more comfortable with generally experimentation. The other would typically either not finish a lab or ask for extended time. I think one of the opportunities that have come out of COVID is what we see here on this side with Koki. We've learned to try and change our labs so that they have a version of it that they first trial at home with the comfort and at times the help of family, so as to remove or encourage their comfortability and confidence, taking away some of the fears that come out, particularly with physics and math. It's sometimes students are not getting it, not because it's hard, but because they fear to engage with the concept. So this is an example where I think we've definitely taken forward post-COVID, where before students are going into the set lab, figure out a way to customize the lab that they'll be doing that day or for that week, giving it to them as homework for them to try and record with their phones. And one thing we learned over the holidays was that if you're giving over the lockdown, if you're giving any piece of work, so the purpose of this was for them to do a graphical analysis. They had to work out and calculate the slope of the graphs that they had, figure out whether it's an exponential type relationship. I'll show the file later, the full lab later, but yeah, so you would have gone straight into the analysis, excuse me, you would have otherwise gone straight through to the analysis. But because they are at home, they can fully go through the concept, analyze the different nomenclature, parts of the nomenclature of the wave, and be able to fully engage in a way that was previously not able, because you always had the pressure of time when kids are experimenting. You always are pressed at times. Even with resourcing, you are thinking, okay, I want each student to have a set of materials, but at $8.50 a month, there's only so much I can do. If we can switch it around and combine the lessons for not just learning math in isolation, but now what we're starting to do is, for example, this one, it's a math and a physics lesson. When we went to the chemistry side, it would be also a chemistry and a math lesson. So not always separating out math as a standalone subject. When we're doing the conceptual investigations, let's combine them. It takes longer, but now if we were to incorporate the time that students have at home, the limited resources that they have, it extends the time that we have, and you find that the outcomes of it are a lot better than what I definitely anticipated. I assumed that kids would struggle a lot more with the physics than they have. They were able to complete both waves and graphical analysis of waves within the comfort of their own home. The grade 12s just came back and they took a pre-assessment and they were scoring really well in that lab. So in our class, we've been looking at wave nomenclature, collecting the data, analysis of the data, and reviewing the data. And we found that it works much better if they're able to take it home and use things that they can find at home. Now, this obviously means that the teachers have to plan a lot more. There's a lot more planning from teachers' standpoint. There's also a lot more work that students are having to do. But the existence of, I'll also share here, let me share here. We would incorporate that in collaboration with a Google Classroom platform. So this is where we would have our grade 12 class, and this is where they would have closed out that lab. We are still sticking to free resources because of where our pricing is. So we would be tracking this on Google Classroom, and students would then have to take pictures of their work and upload it onto Google Classroom. And our job as teachers now becomes to give individualized feedback here. Let me wait for that to load. So you would be commenting here on some of the things. Sorry, this is actually my screen. this would be the calculation bit, and you can go in, students will load multiple pictures, and you have, sorry, I just want to go to the graph, which was the main point of it all. You'll see the graphical bits to it and the analysis that follows. And then depending on what students have covered, I would then group them, the teachers would then group them into small groups to have a discussion via WhatsApp video calling. And at times you also would return certain assignments to them to say, you know, Nonhlanhla, based on what you've done in the analysis, it looks like you still need to go and review some of the concepts. And here is where we would assign some work on Khan. Let me just share that screen. I hope you guys can see. Then we would be can you guys see my Khan screen? Can anyone tell me if you can see my screen?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yes, we can see it.
We've seen
Thank
it.
you. So then we would assign some work here on Khan based on how the waves work would be going on the one side. Before the actual video and the graph itself was never graded. It was there as a means to get them to check in, to get them to be on the right frame of mind, to start discussing different definitions, because some of them first would make mistakes in the video, and we would ask the questions, what's the difference between an oscillation and a period? Because once they see it, then they're not going to be caught out in the exam. And that's a typical, on the lower end of the spectrum, a typical, what's this mistake students make is by not understanding definitions because they can't see them. It means they can't always then go into the more analytical parts of the question. And this works well mostly for it works well. It works for, this worked really well for older students. However, for younger students, we found that you needed to give them simpler, more exciting things to do at home, where you needed to focus more on things that had quicker wins. So the younger students over the holidays were working mostly with chemistry plus math incorporation. And if you let me, I'll share one last video and pause for questions. So this would be, Dumisho is a grade, she's a grade 9 student. So she was assigned this work because
Nonhlanhla?
Yes.
Hi, Nonhlanhla. I wonder if you could start rounding this off now, and then we'll just take a few specific questions that relate to what you've been describing to us. Is there anything you need to do just to round this off?
I think the biggest thing that we've learned from COVID is that we generally assume, I know for us, that we should create a safe environment for students to learn at school, and that the best learning happens at school. We found that the best, with the absence of physical presence in the school, we need to turn the home environment into the classroom. We need to turn the kitchen into the lab. We need to turn the bathroom into a lab, and the math piece needs to be incorporated every time. So instead of teaching math separately, we've even gone as far as changing the schedule. Math and physics go together, chemistry and physics go together, because the mathematical component is always about showing the relationships that we always see in nature. Now, this involves a lot more planning than before, but it really is engaging students even post-COVID when they're back in class. It means a lot more independent work. It means at times a lot more feedback that's required for teachers, but it's less time of us talking, it's more time of student doing and getting a sense of how exactly am I doing.
I see Chris has commented that it's wonderful to see this integration of the maths and the science. I was just wondering, when you prepare these lessons, you prepare a task. Do you provide or suggest material to the kids, maybe Khan Academy, beforehand? And to what extent do you then go in and look for more appropriate bits of media to feed back to them when they have an actual problem? What's the percentage of those two activities from your point of view?
I mean, the first bit has to be highly scripted. You'll notice both students in the first set of videos were following a method. I need to credit here, this wasn't a method that we've developed from scratch. We took a past paper, a past practical paper, and we modified it to use materials that students would be able to find at home. So we'll be focusing on a specific theme or specific topic for that period, and we're trying to use pre-designed, at times pre-designed labs that are being modified to use what students are able to find in the home. And then the Khan, and the second part of your question around Khan, we are, depending on where a student is getting stuck, what I didn't share here is that we are also doing quizzes remotely, using a myriad of things, but the most effective one is Google Forms. Depending on how a student is responding, then we would say, okay, student one maybe is struggling with just the general basics of weights, and then go into Khan and specifically assign that to students. So we've linked our Google Classroom to Khan Academy, and we can assign things individually to students, and we can also assign things to groups of students.
Okay, look, let me just, we've got a couple of questions and points here that let me put them to you. Due to learning from home now in place, that automatically limits the communities which exist at school. What modalities in place to bridge this gap? That same pun again.
So what we had to learn to do is we were running a full school on WhatsApp. Our school runs from 7:30 till 3, and we would even have homeroom via WhatsApp, give students activities. So sometimes, now this is a lot of work for teachers, because you find your phone blows up, and when you open it, you have like 300 messages on WhatsApp. We created WhatsApp groups per class on in WhatsApp, and we would check in at times with an activity that's not related to science. So in the first week, we were checking in to see, how safe is your home in relation to COVID? Are people sanitizing surfaces? Because we had already started having that discussion before school closure. And later we were doing debates remotely, based on what the president has said, based on what Nonhlanhla Masina has said. We'll pose a question, and then students would be posing a video response or a voice note response. It's not the same, obviously, but it was a way for us to check in with each other in the larger group. But the smaller groups that would be a topic-based would be more interactive, where we are addressing specific challenges that students would have.
Nonhlanhla, what you showed us there, the videos, was that taken or made during level 5? It
was made during level 5.
And full-on lockdown.
It's full-on lockdown, and students would have to share their work. I think we were very conscious about having an output for each class. So if you gave students a task, or even if there was a discussion on WhatsApp that was going on, students always had something to produce after the class, and that's how we would mark register. We were marking register every day, but it wasn't whether or not you checked in with your name on WhatsApp, it was whether or not you produced or the work for that particular time period.
Okay. Smangi Twala has asked the question about, he likes the idea of the home being a safe space to learn, but what about the involvement of the parents? What have you done there? Presumably you had to tutor some of the parents. What are your interactions been with the parents?
Interestingly, we didn't have to tutor the parents. The parents are also in the groups. So some parents, my favorite ones are the older grandmas, because we have a lot of a considerable percentage of our students are orphaned and are being looked after by their grandmothers, or the parents work elsewhere and the grandparents are taking care of them. What the parents are doing is generally keeping tabs to see if the children are working. They are watching the videos, because sometimes we would be sending explanatory videos on the group on how students should try and attempt the problems. So everyone is getting the same things. The parents would be helping students do some of the experiments. Now the videos with the parents helping are obviously going to be longer, because they too are going through the motions. I wanted to share that, but on average, those are averaging at like 3-4 minutes each. But you start getting collaboration with parents and siblings.
Okay. Peter Moody, I'm just assuming that PM is Peter Moody. It is, because I can see from the spelling it's so bad. It must be you, Peter. Anyway, he says that he loves the idea of integration using simple materials in different parts of the house. This is so practical. Is this available to primary scholars?
We are a high school, unfortunately, but I expect that, anything is available if you put the mind.
Do you know of anyone that's trying to do what you're doing, but in the primary schools, and they come to you for advice?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
I think we're all in a space of learning.
We're still learning. We're still just sprinting to keep up. Yeah. Okay. But definitely there are opportunities there. Tuli Mashiani, who, by the way, is coming to us from Norwich in England, in a summery Norwich. How do you overcome the challenge of access to devices?
So we had to be proactive here. So the school does have devices. When I shared the slide earlier, during the time where we say we're having independent, we have school devices that students would be sharing. So we had to loan out some of those devices to parents, so that the students are able to connect.
Okay. Yeah, so devices are a problem everywhere. I think we've all found it, and also the
but
cost
interestingly
of
enough, we
data.
only loaned out 4, and everyone else had the device. I found that the challenge with the device was more people didn't know the power of their devices. A majority of the students have smartphones, but they're not using them the right way. So we had to do some training once the president announced lockdown. We asked students to bring their phones, connected them to the school Wi-Fi, and ensured that we train each student on how to use their devices. What we also found was when students didn't have the necessary, the smartphone, they were borrowing from their parents and bringing that to school for us to install the necessary apps and to update the system.
It's a big management exercise for every teacher involved, and you, of course.
Yes.
Huge. How did you manage the time for grading activities?
Tell me more. If it was timed and we wanted them to...
That is the question. I think it's probably asking about how much time was it taking to grade everything.
Oh man, in the beginning, it takes too long because it's generally, and our teachers complained a lot about it in the beginning, because it's easier to have a book in front of you and be marking and adding comments as opposed to going through individual pictures and be adding comments there. But once teachers adjusted to it, it was harder in the first week. Once they got used to it, they really took to it like duck to water.
Okay.
Because what's nice about it is that you no longer have to prepare your mark schedules or your spreadsheets. It's automatically populated for you, and I think teachers appreciated that.
Okay. Did the students have problems, says Bridget Mullins, did the students have problems uploading videos to their tutor in terms of data? Would they upload to WhatsApp or Google Classrooms? Well, how did you do it?
they would upload to WhatsApp. There was definitely a data problem. We did have to restructure our budget and issue each student with 10 gigs of data. So we
Okay.
had to issue students with data.
Oh, so you actually issued them. Yes, one wonders how we would have survived this without WhatsApp and Google Classroom and Zoom and so on. It would have been a bit of a nightmare.
Yeah.
Okay, perhaps this is the last. In fact, no, we're actually into the discussion. This doesn't have to be the last, but you can cascade this to 5 to 9 learners where the parents and guardians can be involved.
Definitely.
Do you get the question there?
Yes, you can. I think, you know, one of the things that we don't always talk about when we discuss inquiry-based learning, I think from the sort of our state system or traditional teaching, sometimes people complain that it takes too long and it takes away time from covering the curriculum. But what it does do is that it breaches the conceptual gaps in a way that stepwise teaching wouldn't. And it also allows for us to be able to give individualized instruction with the help, now if they're doing it from home, with the help of the parents and guardians, because sometimes our videos, when we didn't want to group students, or we needed to give individualized feedback to, say, Temba would be on a video call with his grandma as we're taking him through it.
Yeah. I'm sure this is a question that Viola is asking on behalf of a lot of other people, even if she doesn't realize it. How long does 10 gigs last?
Interesting. So because we were using Khan Academy, and Khan Academy during this period was 0 rated, I'm not sure if everyone knows, on Telkom. So firstly, we had instructed our parents to all purchase Telkom SIM cards so that we could plan better. Because on Telkom, we knew that the Khan Academy component is 0 rated. The exercises, the quizzes are automated, and the videos are also 0 rated, so it wouldn't be high on the data consumption. So then 10 gigs is, students still have it. It was supposed to be 60 days, and they seem to have used it well. You do need to specifically talk to parents that they need to use it for schoolwork. So what we found was, at times, parents would give the SIM cards to students as school starts, and then take the SIM card away at the end of the school day to reissue it the following day.
Okay, this is just a general comment from Chris. It's great to see such creative initiatives to overcome the COVID barrier to learning. Access to devices is a major barrier to some of the communities that we serve. And I think the 0 rating that has come in, and perhaps this is going to push the move to reducing the cost of data, just because it's the way that so many people are communicating these days. I'll tell you what I'd like to do now. We're getting everybody coming up with sort of short questions and so on, and I'm sitting here doing all the talking. What I would like you to do, if you do put in a question, please just indicate if you would like to put that yourself, and then we'll open you up and you can talk to the whole group. And remember that we've got Iliyaas sitting in the wings there, also available to come in, and maybe I should have brought him in more myself. But just indicate if you would like to put your own question, because there may be a bit of discussion going with it that I'm not going to pick up just by looking at the truncated question you put on the chat. So while you're thinking about that, let's take another question. I've got another one here from Bridget Mullins. Very clever about the Telkom SIM and Khan Academy. We've been thinking the same. Okay, great minds think alike. But I would imagine, Nonhlanhla, you and in fact, Iliyaas from a couple of years back, you guys have got quite a lot of experience. But did you still find that you were being hit with curveballs every other day, things that you then had to stop and think yourself through and then move on?
Yes, definitely. You know, sometimes students don't check in with the remote learning, and you're waiting on certain students. There was a period in the beginning of lockdown where only a handful of students would check in. So then we had to figure out how do we get all the kids to be working, and that's when we decided to add the parents in, and at the end of each day making sure that there's an output per session. So if you're supposed to be in math, there's an output for that session, and if you are not present on that day, staff is calling your guardian to say, Nonhlanhla was not in class today. Can you let us know what was going on? This obviously increases your expenses because now you have to load your staff up with data. It also increases their stress level, you know, because they're having to check on everyone and be making calls. And at times they'll be sent ducking because so-and-so doesn't know where the child is.
Okay. All right. But you learn to think on your feet, don't you?
Yeah.
Think quickly. All right.
So I mean,
An
maybe just on
extension
our
of that
side.
question. Who is speaking to me?
I was just going to say on our side. I know you sort of addressed.
Iliyaas.
Definitely, it's been a massive learning curve because in 2017 we only had the question and answer service on WhatsApp group, just a simple WhatsApp group where students could post their questions and tutors could respond. But then we quickly realized that that model on its own was not sustainable because students were coming to you with questions that you could see. It's the reason why they're asking this question is because the concept is not well understood. So that drove us to creating the bank of concept videos. And so our algorithm that I've presented to the group today, it's been a process of developing that algorithm. We started with the number 4, then we did number 1, then we did number 3, and then we did number 2. So it's been a consistent learning process because I think both of our platforms are we're not trying to teach in the traditional way. So naturally there's going to be some resistance if you're offering something new. But I think once you show the student that what you're offering is not really to benefit you, it's to benefit them. And once they can see the benefit to themselves, I think that will also create some encouragement on their side to work harder and to pursue that new methodology.
Iliyaas, 2 questions. One very quick one from me. Do you find that you've had to adapt what you call your algorithm, the sort of teaching mode, and your structures and sequences within that? Did you find that you got certain questions from kids and maybe questions from a few of them that would start making you adjust your algorithm, go back to it and tinker with it and so on?
So, for example, there might be certain questions that we received more often than others. So, for example, there's a question in the maths exam, for what values of x does, those types of questions that you see in the maths exam. We initially, that was not part of our concept videos, but then we soon realized it was such a frequent question that was asked in the exams that we thought it would be a good idea to create a concept video on that. So the nice thing is because our resources have been built based on what students have been asking us, it was a good way for us to assess what the demand is and where the demand is greatest for particular sections.
And it is dynamic to the extent that you can take those suggestions and questions into account and adjust your whole system.
Yes,
in a way.
And we're still learning. I mean, I think what we have now is good enough, but definitely there are so many ways in which we can improve, and that's important to realize.
Anyway, you're doing an amazing job. I had a question from Bento was putting in, just to describe very briefly what you're doing for teachers. And this will obviously depend on what the teachers are asking you for when they phone in. But can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think at the beginning I said that Tutonic is trying to provide a holistic service. So it's not just about supporting students, it's also about giving resources for teachers. So what we do is that we actually have a group on our platform for teachers around the country to communicate and to share resources with one another. For example, yesterday there was a teacher that actually, there was a question that they were looking at that they couldn't seem to find the solution for, but then there was another teacher that actually supported them. So we tried to create a collaborative platform for teachers. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we give the teachers our concept videos, so that maybe, and this is the reality of our education system, that in many schools, their teachers might not themselves feel very confident about particular areas of the syllabus. So of course, you can teach students, but if you teach the teachers, that's also a very great investment. For example, in many Eastern Cape schools that we are working with, some of the teachers, especially the matric teachers, they didn't feel confident in terms of the concept. So we recommended that they would watch our concept videos, and from that, they could then communicate to the students. But obviously, we're not trying to say that this is a top-down initiative in any way. It's just the support system is there. If teachers would like to maybe refresh certain concepts in the math syllabus. Then the third thing I would say is that we're wanting to encourage a flipped classroom approach. So very much what Nonhlanhla is suggesting, that you encourage the student to explore maths. And that's the thing, to explore the discipline. Don't just do the discipline, explore, make the mistakes. Because our philosophy is make the mistakes now. Don't make them in the exam. See, make it now so that you don't make the mistakes in the exam. So encourage that art of exploration. And it's often through struggling that you learn the most things. And that's our philosophy. Well,
you call it an art. It's about an attitude. It's about learning that failure isn't a bad thing, and that everybody fails, and you can actually learn something from it. Those attitudes. If you can get that across, you've won quite a big battle. Yeah.
Yes.
Listen, I've got an extension of the questions from Bridget Ann, and then a couple more, but this probably to both of you. With the lifting of restrictions in terms of being allowed to attend schools now, will you still continue to have some level of remote learning, or will you shift back to face-to-face? And then another question, how many students and teachers do you have? And this is specifically to Nonhlanhla. It doesn't really apply to you, Iliyaas, because you are almost strictly online. I say almost, maybe totally.
Yes, totally.
You are totally. So this really applies more to you, to Nonhlanhla, this bridge now to back to school. Do you find that the online was so successful you might want to keep a degree of it going?
Interestingly enough, we are in a township community. So at first, when we said we are going to continue classes remotely, people were not so sure about how this is going to work out. And now lifting of restrictions, some parents are saying, I'm not sure if I want to send my child to school. Can we continue with remote learning? Yeah. So we'll definitely keep a version of it, because we have lost some time. So extending it to the home environment is going to help us a lot in making up for time lost. So definitely keeping it. And also we've always wanted our teachers to be using Google Classroom. Our students are used to Khan Academy. They've always had access to Khan Academy, but they were self-pacing. So now teachers are having to set challenges, and they're having to individualize their exercise assignments to students. So that we're definitely keeping that integration between Khan and Google Classroom, definitely keeping, because especially now that teachers have gotten used to it, and they now see the use for it, and being able to give what's most important that we sometimes miss is students need individualized feedback. If I'm off the pathway that I'm supposed to be going on, I need to be pulled to a side, or if in the absence of being pulled aside, the work I'm assigned needs to be scaled down so that it matches where I am, still cognitively challenging me, but yet putting me in my zone of proximal development. So, so definitely keeping the extended home learning environment. And to the question of student numbers, our student numbers are averaging at about 20 per class. Because of that rotation I showed earlier, we never had all of the students in one class to begin with. So we have a total of 117 students on campus that are being serviced by seven teachers in total. Teachers are always dealing with a subset of the students at any given time, because either students are solving problems, working on a problem, or they're in the lab. From a math standpoint, they'll be solving problems related to a real life experience. For science, they'll be in the science lab, and others are in the computer lab working on Khan Academy. So we've always had that rotation, and we're going to keep it. We are definitely going to move for allowing students to bring their own devices to school. And we're busy trialing that out now with grade 12s.
Okay. It looks like this has forced everybody into a new mode and style of education, and it's good that you can pick and choose and take along with you those things that seem to be working particularly well.
Yes, and
I
also
think you'll have a lot to teach us.
Yeah, and also as we're thinking about numbers and the health and safety codes that schools have to adapt, having a separate space, or it doesn't have to be a physical space, it could be in the school hall where kids are at a distance and they're working on a problem, means that the class size you're dealing with in class is smaller, and so kids can go through a rotation like that. So it allows for us to be adaptable and responsive during COVID times.
Right. I've just been thinking that when we drop down to lower and lower levels, by the time we get, say, to level 1, that means everybody is having more contact with everybody else. It might increase the chances of spread. So when you bring all those kids who've had many more contacts back to school, the schools might become a little more vulnerable. And I'm wondering if certain parents aren't going to, at that stage, want to retract their children from the school environment again and go back to online just to reduce the amount of contact. It's a kind of a perverse thing that I've been wondering for our own school. But that's not for discussion. I've got more questions here. Boy in Ndlovu says, hi, Iliyaas and Nonhlanhla. How is the community reacting to your projects? Are they welcoming you guys? Are there any challenges? Iliyaas, I'll take your question, you first, because it might be quicker. I would imagine you have fewer challenges than somebody that's just trying to introduce it in a very short time like Nonhlanhla. But have you got any points to make on that?
It's been quite a positive reception. I think for a lot of parents, there's understandably a lot of anxiety, there's stress, there's uncertainty, because parents want the best for their children. So that, to know that there is a platform out there that they can continue their education, I think it's a good thing for them it gives them peace of mind that they can still have access to resources, even though they're not necessarily at school. But obviously, there's the challenge. The other challenge is obviously, I think this relates to one of the other questions, is just general access, data issues and other things, which we are working on.
And I was interested, you're talking about your clients or client schools in Eastern Cape, and it just shows us that geography doesn't really matter anymore. I mean, here one of the people attending the meeting is sitting in Norwich in England, and Tuli, we'll come to you just now to see if you have any interesting inputs from your side. But it does start making more sense of this thing we've been talking about called the global village. Okay, but Nonhlanhla, in answer to Boy's questions, any particular challenges? Let me ask the question, any members of the community who are against what you're doing, who find it too different from the convention and are kicking against it in some ways.
Yes, definitely. And to add fuel to the fire, our students are sitting for Cambridge AS exams upon exit. So that has over the years been a huge challenge. I think largely because people didn't understand. So what COVID has taught us is that we needed to bring people more into the classroom to see exactly what students are doing. So we've been sharing more of student work from home via our social media platforms, and the engagement there has increased, and the understanding is also improving, because people just didn't understand or know what exactly we are about, what we're doing, because we're small enough school, we're different enough. That rumors in our type of community can easily spread. So we've had to manage that a lot over the years. And when we've previously lost kids, because you're doing Cambridge AS levels, it means you have fewer subjects. So sometimes principals will be sending kids back a grade. And then of late, they're coming back to saying, but your kids are strong, what's going on? So that's some of the discussions that we're having now locally post-COVID. That's the opportunity that has come through, with principals in our area are contacting us to find out how have you continued to get your students to learn, and also how do you get them to be so strong as they are in the math and sciences. The approach is definitely really good for math and science teaching.
But I would imagine the more common encounter you will have with communities now would be a positive one, because you've got experience in something that everybody is trying to learn about, and very positive experience you're having too. Okay. Nonhlanhla, what about the technical skills of the teachers? Any challenges with teachers adapting? I can tell you from personal experience that this is a big one.
Definitely yes, but we've found a lot of strength in collaboration. So at times, teachers are working from home, you're not able to physically be there to assist. We'll do a video call, and we also had to assign issue teachers with data and devices. You'll have a video conference at home. I found that teachers were helping each other create forms. So they would create a shared folder for Google Forms and say, make this edit here, limit the time that the students can do this, especially on the humanities side, set a timer on the form. I would say pre-COVID, we had trained teachers on Google Classroom, Khan Academy, and Google Forms, and we were expecting them to use it, but they hadn't. They had seen it in our training session every year, beginning of the year. They would sort of work against doing that, and now they've had to apply, and their skills have definitely picked up.
Okay. All right. A couple more questions that I'll put to you, and then I'm going to get people to start asking their own questions. There's been a request for doing that. Quick question to Iliyaas. Can teachers download your concept videos and use them in class? I got the feeling that was something you were doing.
Yes, they can download. So most of the videos, 95% of them are on Google Drive, which allows for downloading. However, I do make the argument to teachers that I would recommend that the concept videos not be watched in class, because the synchronous model means that everybody has to watch it at the same pace. So the advantage of the concept videos is that each student can watch it in their own space at their own time. They can watch it 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. They can press pause, they can go back. So that individualized attention that the video can give to you in the asynchronous model is something that we advocate for. However, there are circumstances, so for example, in the Eastern Cape, one of the challenges that we've noticed is that there are some schools don't have devices, let alone data. So what's happening in some of those schools is that there's a guy who's actually downloading our concept videos. He's downloaded all of them. I was very impressed. And he's just taking it to the schools there, and he's playing it on a TV for them. So, and then what's happening is that the students are actually getting into small groups to discuss the concept videos. And the idea is that the students could teach each other after watching the video. So there are ways. So the beautiful thing about videos is that there are ways to make it work. It's such a versatile instrument that one can use to incorporate into the classroom.
Yeah, this is it's wonderful, the kind of flexibility that you can build in if you're just a wee bit creative about it, which clearly you are. Okay, now let me start getting into the vox populi and let people talk for themselves. Machingafa Gaifa Kazai, the floor is yours if you want to ask your question, because also you're talking about asynchronous communication versus the synchronous. So would you like to put this question yourself to Iliyaas?
Yes, but I understand along the way, he mentioned it maybe subconsciously, I think, where he was saying there is always a two-way communication, because for synchronous communication, we say it's supposed to be instant, real-time situation. So I think he mentioned that, he touched on that along the way. And he also touched on asynchronous communication, where certain concepts or communication can be done. Then students can go through it at their own pace, depending whether they have access to internet. They are not being disadvantaged because of that. So I think he mentioned it along the way. I think the last.
So you're covered.
Yeah, I'm covered. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Boy and Nonhlanhla. Yes, I am well. Thank you. Do you have another question that you'd like to put? Boy. Am I getting through? I'm just let me try and find boy here. The question that you wanted to put here yourself. All right, let me ask it. What is this? Sorry, I've lost it. There we go. This is the question that Boy was putting, and you can chip in as soon as you find your voice. Also, for example, no, this is just advice. Okay, all right, let me go on then. Smangi Twala, the fee that each learner is paying per month is very low. How do you survive paying your staff and running the school effectively? It sounds like a question to Nonhlanhla, who's laughing there and recognizes the problem.
Oh yeah. So we are raising money not for profit. By design, from the previous slide, you'll notice the fact that you have a larger student populace across fewer teachers would mean that your operating budget is lower, because your largest budget item is going to be your highly skilled teacher. So we are using fewer of them and supplementing it with the problem-based approach, as it were, where kids are either working in the lab or solving a problem, or in the computer lab, because that means then the teacher is only dealing with a subset of the students at any given time. But I won't lie, we are on a tight budget, particularly now with COVID times. We've had commitments fall through. We run as a non-profit. One of my main jobs is to raise money for the school, and it's been tough, and it's really hard at the moment. But we continue on, and we are reviewing our operating model. We might be increasing fees, but our families can't afford, even at $850 a month at the moment. We are still giving scholarships to students. At most, the oldest ones for the top 3 grades are paying $350. It's only recently where we've stopped giving the scholarship option as a means to try and sustain the school and be less dependent on donor funds. But it's definitely tough. Our operating budget, our operating model is designed to be lean, but it's low.
Okay, this is not a time for sissies, eh? You're going to be tough.
Yeah.
Folks, I'm going to open it out a little bit now. We've had lots of questions being channeled through me, but there might be points that you want to put. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to include Tuli Mashiani now, who can come in and speak of any particular experiences you might have had in England, where she is at the moment. But if anybody wants to put questions directly to Iliyaas or Nonhlanhla, or indeed to Tuli or anybody else that they think might have some input, you can do it now. Lungile? Lungile, do you want to come in? Not sure if I have, where is Lungile on this great scheme of things that I've got here? I don't know if I've cut you guys out. I don't think so. Lungile, where are you?
I think Lungile might be having a challenge with the mic because he or she's not muted.
Yeah, I see that it's open, but we can't hear. All right, Lungile, you carry on working on the mic problem, and anybody else wants to come in and ask questions of their own. I could pick on people, but that would be fairly pointless.
Hello, sir.
Boy, you're on. We can hear you. You go for it.
Yes, I'm very sorry. I'm in deep rural areas around Bushbuck region, so I'm experiencing a network challenge problems.
Okay.
Yes, and my question is based on the two presenters. I mean, I just want to ask, because I'm involved with Uplands Outreach at White River. Then sometimes when we go to school, we're experiencing challenges when it comes to the unions, and then when it comes to the department, and then they're having extra classes, and they have camps. So guys, how do you get time to implement your program to these learners? Because like, I don't know, maybe it's around Bushbuck Ridge and part of Mpumalanga, around Nsika Circuit, where there are a lot of camps. Children are spending a lot of time in camps, actually. So I just want to ask, how do you survive all those things, the unions, the department, and the extra classes that are having, the camps and everything? I don't know, how do you deal with those?
I think Nonhlanhla might be better suited to answer that question.
Okay, Nonhlanhla.
I was writing down those notes and I was like, oh, the department can definitely be a challenge. I think what I've learned over the years is to try and be proactive around it. So they like things to talk to their understanding of the curriculum. So if they come in and kids are doing a concept, and it's even further challenging for us because we're following a different curriculum. So I always have to match it to what they think they need to see. So if a math person is coming in to inspect and they see kids working on, say, a financial math investigation, and they'll ask, like, why is this being done now when it should have been done at this time? I'll say, no, it needs to connect to this concept and that concept. Your best option with the department is to document, and be proactive. They like to have their egos. So I hope there isn't anyone from the department here, but just document and ego stroke as much as you can. And try and make sure that whatever it is you do can somehow talk to what the department wants. Because all the time, the concepts we're doing are actually there in the curriculum. We're just going to the grassroots of it. So if you can explain it in terms that they understand, it's going to be helpful. Equally with union, I think you have to be proactive with how you manage it. You have to know who the union reps are in your area and try and bring them in. Because once people come in and they see what you're trying to do, you get, my experience is probably going to be different in the area that you're in. But SATU was brought into the school to see how we're doing things. SATU members, senior members from our region, I meet with frequently to try and update on how our approach is changing or what's going on and how we're helping students. But the opposition does pop up from time to time, and you have to proactively try and manage it, unfortunately.
The more you do these things behind closed doors, the more suspicious people become, the more trouble you'll have to, you know, to try and, so bring them in and show them from the outset what you're doing.
Oh, thanks a lot, sir.
Okay, any more discussions? Anybody want to come in? Lungi, if you want to type your question up, I can put it to you if you're having problem with the mic. Anybody else? I see there's a thing on Zoom that I didn't know, so hands up.
Yeah,
you put your hand
me.
up.
Yeah, it's me.
Well, I don't know, just put your camera on and put your hand up.
I just want to make a comment on what I've discovered along the way. There is so much mushrooming of online platforms which have come into play the last 1.5 months or so. What I've identified is that based on an institution where I am, we have tried to not to rely so much on generic material which is posted on those online platforms, because some of them, they've got a problem of accent. Let's say you have something which has been recorded in the United States. There are some certain words which they will use in maths, for example, which we don't use in South Africa, right? That's one. Even if you take somebody who is in Australia, the English which they speak, the one which is spoken in the United Kingdom, in the US, all of these countries, even if they call themselves native English speakers, it's not the same. Like I had a discussion with somebody when they say, in Australia, they don't call variables like in algebra. They use a certain word for variables, right? So if we expose that to our students here in South Africa, where somebody is talking about variables but is using another name, then there's always communication now in terms of language as a barrier for learning, right? So my suggestion, therefore, is that under those circumstances, it will be better for us, yes, we take these online platforms, but we have to develop our own material which speaks to the environment of the children whom we are teaching at a particular situation. This can be done by involving the teachers who are teaching these students, because they understand them, they understand the accent. Because for me, the language of mathematics on its own is the same, it's universal, though the language of instruction differs. Right.
Okay.
So that's my take on that. The best way is not to take everything which is generic, but let's try to modify and create our own learning space based on our own experiences. I just want to give an example. Let's say you are teaching, you want to explain how equations, you want to link equations with the real life situations. If you come to Northwest where I am, I've never seen a curved bridge here, right? And a curved bridge, I mean, it represents a quadratic equation. So if you put that into scenario to a child to say, okay, I'm going to explain a quadratic equation connecting with a curved bridge, which does not even, exist in Northwest province, then there is a vacuum there. But if you say that to somebody who is in Northern Cape, that other side of Northern Cape on your way to Eastern Cape, hangover or so, there are so many curved bridges there. So if you put that into context, those children will understand.
Yeah. All right. Anything you want to add on, say, Iliyaas? Contextualizing. I mean, when you were getting up to the sharp end in matric, there's less and less context. But any comments on that?
I think it's a very, very good point that obviously you have English, but then you have different dialects of English. And I think it's always, the other point that I think you made was to contextualize it to your own circumstances. So that is something that we have been exploring. So what we were looking at is, obviously, if you look at our concept videos right now, there are different tutors who are making different types of videos. So it's not just one tutor who's making one video. But what might be useful for us in the future is to have multiple tutors explaining the same concept, which might give you diversity. So you might say, okay, I really like that person's way of explaining things, so I'm going to watch their video on functions, even though there are 5 different videos on the same topic. But to give students that option to change. However, I do think that if you can explain it slowly, which is what we do in the video, we use pictures, we use diagrams. I don't think it's going to make much of an issue, especially when on our platform, if student doesn't understand something in the concept video, they have a platform to ask us. So that's why we tell them that stage 4 of the algorithm is you can either ask a question or you can ask us for help on a particular concept, provided you've watched the concept video. So you might say to us, okay, at 5 minutes, you said this thing, but I wasn't sure what you meant. So that's with the human interaction that we allow for on our platform, because we understand that it's possible that maybe the concept video could explain 90% to 90% of the students, but it's possible that there may be some areas based on various contextual differences that exist to allow for that human interaction.
That's a very interesting point, because so much of this is about one-to-many. And you're pointing out the value of the one-to-one, even though we're not in personal spatial contact with one another. Just talking to a person about their perception of something that was said and their problem, and you're getting right down to the hard stuff there with that individual must be enormously helpful, but obviously time consuming as well.
Yeah, and I mean, for example, the other day, it's not just about asking questions, but just general advice. Like last week, a student messaged us, and this is a student that completed matric in 2004, 16 years ago, and now wants to redo mathematics. But they want to only do the grade 12 work because they don't think they have the time to go through grade 8, grade 9, and grade 10. So they were just asking us for advice. So as tutors, we would discuss it amongst ourselves and provide recommendations for the students. So it's not just about sending questions, it's about providing a service from people who have experienced, gone through the system, who now want to give their support to other students. Because I think that's another thing, that what students need, they need guidance. For me, the tutor is not there to necessarily teach everything. That's the teacher's job. The teacher's job is to introduce the concept to the student. But I think the role of the tutor must be refinement. I think in this current tuition system, the tutors are becoming the teachers. Many students are leaving the traditional teaching system and are thinking of their tutors as their actual teachers, as their second teachers. But for us, I think the tutor must be the refiner. The individual learning, the personalized learning should be taken by the student, because at the end of the day, we have to become lifelong learners. That's the ultimate goal here. Your education doesn't stop after you finish matric. Obviously, we are a high school organization, but we need to encourage that culture where students learn and learn how to learn. So it doesn't matter what they do after school. You teach them the tools to how to learn, then it doesn't matter what they do after matric. So that's the benefit of having that human interaction. It's not just static services that you're going through, which is why we chose that platform.
Well, I have a question for you that I'm not expecting you to answer, but how the hell do you find time to study? You're still a student. Sounds like full-time work, this.
So
anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a representative of the organization. I mean, the founder, but we have a great team. I mean, we've got 30 people who are involved in this organization, and we share the workload together. The advantage for me as a tutor is that I work asynchronously. So you've got 30 tutors on the platform, and they're all working asynchronously. The idea is that it's kind of like Uber in a sense, that whoever is available at the time can support the student who needs support. So that means that I can prioritize my studies, and then maybe during the study break, see what are the questions that students are asking. So that's the advantage. The asynchronous model benefits me, but it also benefits the students as well.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's a very powerful idea. I see Elsie Bulawa has raised her hand, metaphorically speaking. Elsie, would you like to pop your question? Elsie, your hand is raised. You've been noticed. I wonder what is your question? I'm not getting through. All right, while while we're trying to sort that out, yes, I see you too there, boy. But I do just also want to respond to another suggestion that was made before you, to formally give Tuli some time just to talk about her experiences on in that hemisphere. Geography doesn't matter. Tuli, let's try and. Where are you?
I'm here.
There you go. Okay, we got you.
Hi, everyone. First of all, it's really nice to hear all these accents. You sound really good. So just to put it in context before I say what the experience has been is, I'm in the UK just for 12 months doing a master's in mathematics education. And my interest specifically for my project is in primary school mathematics. So what I've done is I've kind of put myself into different groups. One thing that I noticed over here, and I'm glad Iliyaas mentioned that they've got a group for teachers, in his platform, that I noticed that there's been a lot of that this side. There's a whole lot of Twitter groups. There's a whole lot where teachers can just, support each other. And just talking to family and friends that side, I keep kind of, saying to everybody that it might kind of feel like you are drowning yourself there, but for the first time, all these countries are having similar problems. It might be on a different scale. For example, they do have disadvantaged learners who are struggling to get connectivity and who don't have devices, but of course it won't be in the magnitude that we have in South Africa. But the problems are similar. One thing that I've noticed, kind of comparing, because I keep in contact with both countries, is that the communication in South Africa has been so much better in terms of the stages and where everybody is. This side, it's been a little bit uncertain. So the kind of atmosphere in schools is very much, teachers are kind of frustrated. They don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Things keep changing around. So how they opened schools here during the lockdown, schools opened on the 1st of June for primary schools only. And they opened reception, which is like grade 1, and year 1 and year 6. That's the only people that could go to school. And the brilliant idea from the government was that the rest of everybody will then join after 3 weeks. The rest of the grades would go to school in primary school. It soon became clear before the second week was over that that was not possible. Because, for example, only a quarter of kids can be in class right now. And those kids are only getting 2 days a week of school. They keep needing to, change around. And of course, again, their average class numbers are much smaller than ours, but in terms of saying we need like half of the students or a quarter of the students so that we can have social distancing, has been kind of an issue as well. High school, bigger struggle. They've totally, the first thing I should have said is the academic year in the UK is September. It starts in September. So as you can imagine, this is kind of like towards the end of their year. And therefore they've got bigger assessment issues and exam issues. They've totally canceled exams for the kind of like their final year of high school. They call it GCSE, and they do A levels as well. And they've canceled that. And they're going to use different ways of doing assessments. So the pressure obviously has been there to kind of make sure that the kids will be ready to leave primary school to secondary school. How are they going to do that? And one of the things, the one thing that's kind of different is that, of course, connectivity is much easier. Of course, data is much cheaper. All sorts of things like that. But they've got a different problem. Like Nonhlanhla mentioned at the beginning, the attendance is not great. They struggle to get kids to attend the remote classes in very big numbers. I think, I spoke to a teacher a few days ago, and she was missing like 60% of her learners you know, they don't know where they are. And sometimes responses from parents are not forthcoming, of course, depending on different challenges. As you can imagine, the pandemic comes with other challenges. So it's not necessarily that the parents are not interested, but, you know, there could be other things happening at home. So there's been a lot of, I'm stalking all these teacher groups. I kind of add myself everywhere so that I can actually be part of the conversations, which has been more helpful to me. But just to speak to Boy's question earlier, with all the challenges, I really have found that teachers really have kind of gathered together and found strength in each other, and kind of shared knowledge, shared tools, you know, and kind of weekly check-in sessions where they can complain about how it's going, ask each other, so what are you going to do with this challenge? For example, they were talking about that particular thing. How do they get the kids interested again? You know, how do they get them to interact again? And these are specific maths teacher kind of gatherings. So about mathematics. So they would give each other practical tools and say, this is what I did and this is what I did. They've gone as far as having quizzes with prizes, and, you know, you get like vouchers to do something. And, you know, it's almost like you are reinventing every day. Some of the teachers have also kind of, the frustration is now, of course, they are in the dual space of remote learning and class learning, the 2 days that kids get to have. The challenge is the momentum is harder to keep up with, because you don't know what student you're going to get on any given day, this rotation thing that kids do. And it's hard to kind of follow up. If a child's going to come to school on Tuesday and then again on Thursday, it's been very hard to kind of keep up with what they're supposed to learn. And also I think Machingaifa mentioned this, that is a big issue. There's a lot of open source material, even here, a lot of open source material, which is great, of course, because you could get ideas on what you can do. But I find that there's a lot around in these teacher groups where the teachers are creating videos of the different concepts themselves. So first of all, the kids will see their own teacher. The kids will see their own teacher explaining a concept. And of course, we understand that as much as us adults are having these challenges, and the kids are having an even worse time. So, you know, seeing their own teacher is kind of a comfort in a way. And the teachers you can copy paste then, because it's another teacher from the Northwest, you know, they use the same terms, you've got the same, you know, ideas. And that for me has been, even they give each other feedback. They do polls each week, you know, how this is going, how that's going, so that they can test what's working. And I see that all of those kind of self-made videos by teachers themselves have been very useful, and there's great feedback from that. The other thing is, yeah, parents are very fatigued over here. I don't know how it's going that side, but parents are complaining everywhere. They can't deal with this whole homeschooling and making sure that people focus and sit on a chair. I've had primary school teachers who would say, you know, they were doing calls in the first part of the lockdown. They were doing like check-in calls with some of their students. They would call and talk to them. And the teachers would say, well, this child talked to me for like 2 minutes and was like, bye. Because of the issue of this remote, this looking at a laptop is not natural, right? And some kids can't just like deal with sitting down for 30 minutes and talking to a screen like that. We expected that they would, but it seems that kids do actually like the interaction that is there. So yeah, it's very much similar, you know, little differences there and there. But I just think that the collaboration and the networking between educators is really helpful. Of course, they've got great advantage in terms of data and access, but the challenges are still the same. Teachers are totally burnt out. Teachers are, you know, really tired, and on a given day they're not quite sure what they're going to do. It's an invention exercise every second. As you keep teaching, you're inventing new things as you go along, and you're testing what works and what doesn't work. High school, I think there's more challenges in high school because due to privacy situations and things like that, it's not quite encouraged to contact kids at home. And therefore they've been having challenges with that. They kind of can send videos, they can send material, but this kind of interaction, you know, is a challenge. There's a lot of legal hoops that they have to jump over. Yeah, I think, let's see if there's any questions. I think I've said most of the things like I had in mind.
Okay, thank you, Tuli. Thanks very much. I think as you talk there, having taught a term online, I concur with just about everything that you've come across in England. There's no reason why it should be any different. I've got a couple of questions here, and thank you for the messages that some people have sent. Inga, Inba, it's a great pleasure, and thank you very much for being here, everyone. We're getting towards the end, but I've got Edzai, and yeah, Edzai certainly has a question, and he's been waiting very patiently to put it. Edzai, the floor is yours. Edzai, are you?
His mic is not connected.
The mic is not connected. Edzai, do you want to? I see it is open. All right, there it's closed again. Okay, it's a bit of this famous inconsistency that we have with these. Boy, you've got a question as well. Do you want to put it in the meantime? And we'll come back to Edzai.
Okay. No, thanks, Adam. No, actually, I think she answered a lot of my questions. Truly answered most of my questions. But the only one that I want to support Mr. Kazai about, like, involving teachers when we're busy with our videos. I expressed that at Nsika's second, because we used to run our outreach there. So we used to invite lecturers from universities, and when they come there, they present. You know, all those sessions, they were like boring, and we end up like losing participants and the like. So it's good for us to go down to run areas or wherever we're going to run our project, to consult and check the environment and everything. Then we implement whatever we want to implement based on, for example, like I'm here to run areas. Like now, if you talk about cases, you can see, talk about what they see. 25 cases to run something like that. Just they will learn quickly, and it will be easy in terms of it. So I just want to support Mr. Gaza that it's a brilliant idea. Let's go down to those basics and run areas and focus on whatever. If you're in the city, talk about trail, but here the road areas, talk about taxi, talk about walking, talk about basics. Thanks a lot.
Can I make a proposal? Because
thank you very much. And boy, you showing us the possibility of outdoor education.
Yes.
Yes, wonderful. Okay, I've got, let's see if Edzai is with us.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, absolutely.
Finally. Right, okay. So thank you very much, Nonhlanhla and Iliyaas, for an amazing presentation. Just a quick one. In terms of digital transformation, we've realized that it's not about the technology, it's more about human behavior, about people changing their behaviors. And what I have seen, because I'm working with a couple of organizations, be it corporate or schools, and we are helping them build LMSs and content and stuff like that. But you find that people are trying to do offline things online, almost like a one-to-one mapping of what they did in class. They just want to take that and put it online, and it's proving to be not as fruitful as possible. And then also with the digital transformation that has happened, I mean, the digital disruption that has happened, you find that some of the speakers have said, content is everywhere, Creative Commons, open education resources and stuff like that. Obviously differing in quality and contextual relevance. But it begs the question to say, what is the role of the teacher, especially in the online setting, to say, should they still be the fountain of knowledge or should they be a curator of knowledge, you know? So what skills are teachers supposed to have? Traditionally, obviously, you had to know your stuff, but now, is it a case of now creating pathways for learners to follow, right? And it will be a mashup of different content and stuff like that. And back to the behavior side. So we've got like a maths platform, a question and answer platform that's free on mathsg.com. Sorry for advertising, it's free. So there's no money that we're making from there. We've got like over 20,000 questions that we have from grade 1 up to tertiary, basically. And we've realized that people come in, but they're passive consumers of information. They don't want to actually be producers of information. So people come to our site, analytics show us that people come in, they look for whatever they're looking for, get it and go. But they don't contribute to say, okay, from my perspective, as someone who is in Kwamashu in KZN, this is what I think of the particular problem. So I think from a behavior perspective, it's something that we should actually look at. Digital transformation is not about technology, but it's about people. So thank you.
Okay, very interesting point there, that passive consumers of information. You're asking whether people suggesting they should become curators of knowledge. Well, one of our aims in education for teachers, of course, is to be a facilitator, and that takes on very very interesting meanings in this situation, especially where you can have one-to-one contact. Just of course, assuming that you don't have too many of them because there's a time issue. But some interesting points raised there, and people may want to take it up. I'm going to carry this on until people vote with their feet and leave. But while the discussion's going, let's keep it going. All right. Yes. Who was that? Okay. I've got the hands going up. That's Nonhlanhla. Come in, Nonhlanhla.
I think that we should always acknowledge that, particularly with high school and primary school and just learning in general, it's social and emotional in nature. Yes, I do agree. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. I think it's Kazai, on the context, incorporation, and students, but I don't think it's an either or. So an example, I'll make a chemistry example because that's where my head goes naturally. If you're having to teach, say, reaction energies over lockdown, Tsakane, where the students are, became the brewery house of Ekurhuleni East. They were in the news for producing and selling their own fermented pineapple, and people were making a lot of money, and students were seeing this. So someone brought it up as we were chatting on their check-ins. So then, instead of going in and trying to explain or figure out which video to send to them to talk about activation energy and exothermic reaction versus endothermic reaction, I just sent them to go and do research, ask and observe, how is fermented pineapple traditionally made? What are the steps? Document the steps. And let's try and understand why each step is necessary. They frequently add sugar. Someone said, I asked, why is that necessary? So that you continually have sugar for the yeast to convert to alcohol. So the context, the role of the teacher at times remotely is for us to send kids out or make them become aware of their own context and let them bring it in. So you could easily be sending kids out to go do like a pineapple or umkomboti or imbamba research, and then they're coming in with their different analyses, and then you're asking them another question to say, are they wrapping the umkomboti with blankets? Why is that? So that they can get activation energy. And then you send a small snippet concept video or concept note around what activation energy is. So we are dealing with in a time where our role is to almost create a hybrid of an education system. Education experience is not an
well done.
but we can do a combination.
Okay, the term hybrid is becoming more and more used, certainly in my school. These hybrid models are being spoken about a lot, but Clearly, it's something whose time has come. Okay, let's see. Razia, thank you very much for that lovely message. There was a question from Azetu, and I think a general question asking where she can find materials for lower primary. Does Tuli want to give us something on that? Yes, all right.
Yeah, actually, I put my hand up initially when she was talking about primary school. I'm not sure if she's tried Olico. Olico has beautiful resources for primary school as well. And then the other thing that I forgot to mention was a strength, was that England has a very, very strong teachers association, or a one-stop shop where everybody knows they can go to. And I think that makes things quite easier. They've got the National Council of Mathematics Teachers. They've got an association of teachers of mathematics. So everybody knows where to go, you know, to find help. So I can see that kind of, it makes things quite easier for teachers and less overwhelming as to which open source stuff you look at, or where do you know, what do you choose and things like that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Now, I've been reprimanded by the organizer that here I am going on, this Zoom platform is required for another meeting at 12:30 and presumably a little bit of time to get organized. So I'm afraid we're going to have to close it down. Edzai, a question about, all right, you've put it up there, mathsg.com. /Q&A. Thank you very much. I'll take that down as well. Fazila, thank you very much for sharing, Edzai. Razia, I've gained so much from the presentation. Truly beneficial. Thank you very much. Well, guys, it seems that we've had our own little experience of online, not so much teaching, but discussion. And thank you very much for participating. Thank you very much for our main speakers, which are Iliyaas and Nonhlanhla, sharing their experience. I think thank you too for raising questions, because it's always nice in these community meetings to know that there are other people that are having the same problems that we're having, because we tend to get very strung out when we have those problems. We think it's something to do with us, but then when you find that a whole lot of others out there having the same experience, it's perversely some kind of comfort to you. I can't take any more questions because we must close down, but thank you, Bridge and Benta, for setting all of this up. Thank you again to our main speakers, and thank you for all of those of you who contributed questions and Bern advice on how I should use Zoom, and also for the points that you made and questions that you asked. So thank you very much, and go well, be strong, and especially stay well. All the best to you. Bye. Elsie Bulawa.
Hello.
Elsie.
Hello. Hello.
If there are people listening, you may talk.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I've been struggling with the network. Okay, thank you very much. I'm from Inclusive Education South Africa. Can everyone hear me?
Well, those that are here, I think they can, although you break up just a little bit there.
Yeah, I have a bad connection. I'm very sorry about that.
Hear you.
Keep talking.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay. Just not a couple of questions, just 2 or 3 questions. Thank you to our today's presenters, Nonhlanhla and her colleague. Just in terms of the resources that are available in their websites, and the way they support learners, how are they adapting those assessments, for instance? Understanding that not all learners are accessing curriculum at the same level. So do the assessments or tasks come adapted, or how do they do that? How do they accommodate the different?
Elsie, that is a big question which must either wait for another time, I think, or perhaps if anybody